Chris Walsh, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
No doubt. I really appreciate you coming on for a couple of minutes and talking some college football. I know we're going back a couple of days, but you've been covering Alabama football, I want to say double-digit years, if I'm not mistaken. What did you take from Nick Saban's Tuesday press conference? What was the highlight that you took home?
Well, it's 14 years, which kind of blows me away.
Wow.
And
okay.
And while I'm at it, it's 24 books.
24 books. My apologies.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-numbing. But if you don't mind, I'm going to take a quick detour. I got to tell this story. It's kind of one of those I can now tell it after the fact that it involves you, and you didn't even know it. Last season.
Really?
Yep.
It involves me, and I don't even know it? Okay, I'm ready now.
Last season, I was working for another media outlet, which we will not mention.
Okay.
And actually, I was working on this story, and we were trying to do it very, very quietly because we were like, let's not tip everyone off to what we're doing. And that's one of the things about covering Alabama football. Like when they bring players up and we talk to them, it's not like we get a one-on-one. There's like 20 of us. So
Sure.
if you're trying to do a story without anyone realizing what they're doing, you have to be really kind of careful how you ask the questions and so forth. So anyways, we're in the media room, and the story I'm working on is on how basically Alabama has these outstanding pass rushers, and they can't draw a holding call. And we're sitting in there, and all of a sudden you come in, and you start talking about that same subject. And you're saying it in front of me and in front of everyone else, and I must have given you this look like I'm about to kill you.
Wow.
Kind of thing.
Okay.
And yeah, it's totally true. And we had this whole thing set up where I had all these, Alabama's penalties charted out over the last 2 years, and we ended up deep sixing the story because we were like, well, now everyone knows, someone else is going to run with us before we can finish it, kind of thing. And I just kind of, it's one of those. I was like, I've got to tell Ryan this story, somewhere down the line, because you were sitting there talking, and you were, saying in front of me and in front of like other people, and I know you were like trying to get interest. Like, I don't understand this kind of thing. How is this going on? And I'm just like, would you please just stop?
Man, I didn't realize it. You should have gave me the reporter sort of wink a little bit, and I would have backed off. But man, I didn't even realize that. But I mean, you do look back, and I look at one of the greatest defenses that we've seen in a long time, and I often ask the question, do they hold Alabama to a different standard? And
yeah,
that's where I was sort of going.
Exactly, and it was funny because I ended up squeezing it into something else later on, but it was kind of shocking a way to see, Alabama last year, opponents got fewer flags than any other team in college football. So it's I know that's kind of one of those drums that you were beating on your radio show, so I kind of wanted to finally tell you that you were beating the right drum there.
Okay, good. I didn't realize that, but man, I feel like I owe you an apology. So I destroyed an article that you were working on for a couple of weeks. But Chris, I want to dive into the conversation and let's go back to Nick Saban, because he said a lot in a short amount of time. It was one of the short press conferences, only like 9.5 minutes. But when you look back, I mean, he said a lot. What was your big sort of takeaway from that press conference?
It's kind of interesting because, one of the things that Saban's been talking about in the two press conferences that he's done, and he's alluded to this before, especially when Lane Kiffin was around, that Alabama's offense is one of those that is going to work within certain parameters. And actually, we're going to have a story on SEC Country appearing any second now about this, and that, a lot of people are kind of wondering, it's like, now that there's a new offensive coordinator, how much is going to change? Is it going to be, are we going back to power football? Are we going to be, doing this? Is there going to, the tight end's going to be more? And the thing that really, really strikes me is I think you're going to see very little change when it comes to the overall scheme and maybe even with the team's identity. There's a lot of versatility on this offense, and I think they are fully aware of it, and they're going to get as many players involved as they can. And I think this offense is going to be very, very tough to play against this season, just because Alabama can attack you so many different ways.
Yeah, and I was looking at that. It just published here on SECcountry.com, so I haven't had time to read it, but you talk about Alabama's versatility will make it a very dangerous offense in 2017. Let's start at the number one spot. And he gets all the praise when they win. He gets all the criticism when they lose. It's the quarterback, regardless of the year. Can Jalen Hurts, do you think he can improve as a quarterback? I know Nick Saban even said it. He wants to improve as a passing team. Do you think Jalen Hurts can get the job done?
Absolutely. I mean, number one, to begin with, he was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year last year. That's as a freshman. You know, you go and you look at just football history in general. When do players make the biggest strides? Is it the first year or is it after the first year? And it's almost always after that first year. I can't imagine what that was like last year for Jalen Hurts to suddenly get thrown in. I mean, he won the job. He was obviously Alabama's best option at quarterback, but, you know, just trying to get a college system down and to play at that level that first year, I think he's going to be a lot more confident, and I think he's going to be able to really start zeroing in on, you know, things that didn't go as well as they'd hoped last year, that he can do better. So yeah, I'm absolutely in the Jalen Hurts camp going into this year, and it's funny when I hear people are like, oh, is there going to be a quarterback competition? No, I don't think that unless he really stumbles badly, he's the guy.
Let me go to this offensive line. When I look back at the offensive line, for the last couple of years, they've given up a lot of negative plays. I think they were 125 last year. I think they were 127 in 2016. I may have one or two of the numbers off, but I know they were one of the worst teams when we talk about negative plays, tackles for a loss allowed last year. This offensive line seems to be stabilized. Through 5 practices, we're seeing some of the same guys at that rotation spot at that first string so far. This offensive line could be a strength for this football team going into 2017.
I think it's going to be, and I think there's a lot of depth there. That's what I see. I mean, they've got the size, they've got the talent, they've got a lot of guys you can kind of see it's kind of clicking. I think there's going to be some really good competition for those jobs and even the backup jobs as we kind of move forward. So there's a lot that they can do with this offensive line. But the thing that just jumps out at me when I look at these guys is just they're freaking huge. You know, it's not just the starters per se. You know, there's a 6'7" guy at right tackle. Well, there's another 6'7" guy right behind him, you know, with the second unit, and then right behind him is a guy who's 6'6". It's you know, I kind of think as we move along, you know, when you have guys who are physically so much different and so much better as you know, say like an Alex Leatherwood, as he starts putting it together. You know, he's going to have to earn his spot, obviously. And that's a message that we've already seen, you know, in these first few practices. But, you know, it's not like they need this guy to come in and be a starter day one. They've got guys who have been there, and they seem to be putting it together. So, yeah, I think the offensive line is going to be pretty strong.
Is there a unit that you're concerned about on that offensive side of the football?
I don't know if it's a concern. I'm just going to say we know the least about the tight ends, just because of the experience. And the one thing that I just don't see yet is, you know, when they get into a short yardage situation, you know, who's going to be the tight end that's in the game. But, you know, you can cheat a little bit and use a tackle in that spot. So that's probably what they're going to end up doing there. But across the board, I don't see any weakness at all. It's just, you know, the fact that they only have 3 quarterbacks is a concern, obviously. But there's a lot of depth at running back. There's a lot of depth at wide receiver. And there's a lot of depth on the line. So, yeah, I think the offense is going to be looking really good this year.
You never know what Nick Saban is doing when he stands in front of that podium, but he said something that I've been trying to sort of put under a microscope for the last couple of days. I've played the audio, I've went back and I've listened to it. He kept talking about, he said, this was his words. He said, we want to be a well-rounded, pro-style offense. And then he mentioned that they would like to be able to take advantage of some of the college rules that allows. What do you think he was talking about there?
Oh, I think he's definitely talking about, you know, getting speeding things up, you know, not allowing teams to substitute, you know, those kind of things, which, you know, had obviously kind of hurt Alabama. So it's remarkable over the last couple of years to see the way that he has tweaked things to, like you said, take advantage of the rules. And, you know, the way things are going right now, it's the offenses have such a huge advantage if you don't have a really good defense, you're in serious trouble.
But Chris, if Alabama does this with this offensive line and these backs, if they do go a little up tempo, it should be illegal. Because I mean, you see the power that I see in this backfield and this offensive line. If they're able to combine that with up tempo, I mean, I don't even know if these teams should even oppose Alabama if they decide to go this style. I mean, I'm trying to, to be a homer here, but I mean, when I start looking at this offensive line and I look at the quality of backs, if they're able to go up tempo and just keep pounding people in the mouth, good luck. You're going to need it.
Yeah, and kind of go back to 2 years ago when it was, we're going to wear you down, and then we're going to bring in Derrick Henry and pound away with him. You can see a lot of that kind of stuff, I think, in this year coming up. And it's just the story. And this touches base with the story that I did. It's just they're so versatile, and they can beat you so many different ways. It's every single week you could see seeing them attack a defense a different way, and just whatever that weakness is, they're going to go after it.
Well, that's what New England does, really. I mean, they take what the defense will give you.
Good comparison, yeah.
Let me go to the defensive side of the football. Do you expect that big of a drop-off from Alabama 2016 and 2017 defense?
Oh, there's probably got to be a little bit of one just because of all the turnover and you're losing the Buckus award winner, and you're losing the guy who won the Defensive Player of the Year awards, and Eddie Jackson, if he doesn't get hurt last year, I'm convinced he would have been an All-American. So just from that standpoint, I just don't quite see how they can quite do it again. But having said that, you have veteran secondary. I think it looks good if you can avoid injuries. Linebackers, it's probably going to take a little while, but my goodness, they've got some real players on that roster. And the defensive line, right now they've only got 9 guys, and they really need to keep them healthy. And some of those guys are unproven. I think that's kind of the big question on the defense is how well these reserve linemen are going to step up. And thankfully for Alabama, that they've got at least 2 more guys coming in over the summer. So I just don't see how they can be quite as good. But, I mean, they're still going to be good. It's still going to be Alabama, and they're still going to be aiming to shut down the run.
Jeremy Pruitt, to me, is on the fast track to becoming a big-time head coach. If not this year, but if he can get that defense to click and they can perform even close to what they were able to do last year, he's going to get some major phone calls. They're going to have to make a big decision if he's going to take the next head coaching job, because I think he's going to become a very hot commodity if Alabama's defense can perform.
He probably is, and the sad thing, he'll probably be a really good head coach, but he's one of those guys, I think he's an outstanding defensive coordinator, and to me, he's probably not going to be, maybe he'll probably prove me wrong, but he's one of those guys, I just think he's such a good coordinator that, topping that or equaling that as a head coach is going to be really tough.
You wrote a book a couple of years ago, and I know you've went through the list, and you've got Nick Saban versus college football, the case for college football's greatest coach. And you wrote it, and you put the stats in there. Do you believe that more now since he's won, I guess he's made some college football appearances, he's won 3 straight in the SEC. How much more do you believe that now than when you wrote the book? Because I remember talking to you and I, and we've had many conversations about this. It seems like that would be more concrete now that he's the greatest coach.
I'll put it this way. When we started talking about the book, and actually the book came from, ironically, something out of the New England Patriots. The book publishing house that I use, they did a book called Tom Brady versus the NFL. And it was, somebody writing, I think he's the best quarterback in history, and this is why. And they came to me and said, could you do something similar, with that with Nick Saban? And the first thing I said, now granted, this is a few years ago, I said no because, A, I didn't think it was true at the time, and B, what I said was if you did a Mount Rushmore of college football coaches, he would be on it. And they were like, okay, that's perfect. We want you to do it. Go ahead with the book. So at the time, I did all the research, and then it was like, okay, who would be on my Mount Rushmore? And it's in the book, and I had it as Saban, Bryant, Bowden, and Nuke Rockne were the four that I went with. And then I had like a second tier and a third tier and so forth. Now, when I wrote that, I was like, okay, he's easily top four. He might be even as high as second. Now, I don't think there's any doubt he's easily top two. And in general, I think he has to be considered the greatest coach in college football history. And I think what you have to say is that Bryant is the biggest icon. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. But it's so much tougher now to win on a consistent level because of the way the game has changed and, scholarship limits and recruiting and so forth. I mean, the fact that he's won, I think it's now 7 straight recruiting titles in a row, that's ridiculous. And I don't think anyone's going to touch that for a long, long time.
Yeah, and we talk about it here quite often. I know it's been my soapbox, but I look at the gap between him right now and the rest of the league. I mean, he has ran all the coaches out of this league. When you talk about the quality national championship winning caliber coaches, they're gone. I mean, it's like taking candy from a baby.
Yeah, and when people talk about how the SEC isn't the same right now, there's definitely an element of truth to that, and a lot of that has to stem from all the coaches who have left the conference. And we a few years ago, we would talk about, Les Miles has won a national championship, and Steve Spurrier's in the conference, and so forth. And now you look around, and you're just kind of like, it's just not the same.